IndieLisboa Directors Talks é uma conversa sobre cinema entre a nossa equipa e cineastas presentes no festival. Descobre mais sobre os nossos filmes e acompanha-nos em IndieLisboa.com.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to another session of the Director's Talk at IndieLisboa. First of all, I'd like to welcome and thank you the presence of two directors that have filmed here at the festival. Olya Korsun, which is the director of the film Blue Rose. The film is in the international competition of short films. The film is going to show for the first time on the 1st of September here in Culturgest in the small auditorium at 18:45. And also want to welcome Julien Faraut on my right. He has here the film Les Sorciéres de L'Orient, which is in the international competition of feature films. The film hasn't screened yet also. It's going to be screened tonight at 9:45 at Cinema São Jorge, the big room, Sala Manuel de Oliveira. I'm sure it will be quite an event there. And also the next day, near here, Culturgest, also going to show at the library Palácio de Alveias in the garden, outdoor session. So I want to welcome again. Thank you for being here. In the next hour we can discuss a little bit about, let's hope, that your films, but also some things about cinema that we want to enjoy. Feel free to interrupt. This is going to be a very informal conversation. Just because the films, or also because the films haven't shown yet, and people are listening to us, and will have the possibility to come tonight or the other sessions. I want to start by asking both of you, so you can briefly present your films, because people haven't seen it yet. So maybe you can start.
Thank you, Julien. Carlos, I'm sorry, I'm confused. So the film is in short program, but it's maybe the longest of the shortest. So it's 53 minutes long, and it's a documentary. It's a film essay, and I would not say it's about flowers, because if you see it from the formal perspective, it is about flowers, but of course it's about humans and people histories told through the language of flowers and through the stories of flower world that surround us. And in the film, I would say each person would find something that would echo with his or her own sort of emotional state or ideas or thoughts, because for some people, I speak with people after they watch the film, it's a film about the childhood and, the sadness of losing this naivety and purity of childhood. For some people, it's the film about plant economy and the commodification processes of capitalism and the world we live in, and how nature is commodified. For others, it's the film about the pagan rural festivity in Spain. So it has a sort of like, my initial intention was to create this sort of a box that you find somewhere in the attic, and you open it and it's full of small secrets and stuff, and you unpack it. So it's like really full of small stories, but each story is somehow connected to the flowers. Yeah.
So I guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
My film is also a documentary, mainly based and made from found footage and also new shooting. It's about a volleyball team that was very successful in the 60s, a Japanese women team. And I came across to the story of the name, the Witches of the Orient. It was their nickname. I came across to this story through archives, through film archives, through footage. I'm in charge of a film collection in Paris, owned by the French Sports Institute, and a volleyball trainer came to my place at the Cinematheque more than 10 years ago, and he brought a 60mm can. So we watched the film, and I was really surprised and stunned by what I saw. It was the training of a volleyball women team that was training very, very hard, and it was very far from the standard. In the 60s, nobody trained like this. And the speed of their drills, the intensity of the training session was really impressive. It also reminded me, all of a sudden, to an anime I used to watch when I was a kid on French TV, and it was amazing because this anime was very popular in France and in many European countries, but no one knew that it was inspired by a true story. So it was like an awakening, you know, how it's possible, because the footage was so much alike. So I just start to know more about those witches, and the more I knew about them, the more my desire to make a film on them increased. So I discovered fantastic stories about them, because they were all lived, worked and trained in a textile factory. So it was not a selection. The national team was not a proper selection of the best players of the country, but they were basically a corporate team from one factory, and they won everything. The World Championship in Moscow in 1962, the first Olympic medal in volleyball. So that's basically what the content of my film.
And the anime, was it inspired by them particularly, by this very team?
Yeah, directly.
Wow.
Because they became very popular, and they save in a way the honor of the country, because the very last days of the Olympic Games in 1964, in the judo tournament, a Dutch judoka won the title, and so the Japanese lost the first judo event. So it was like, you can imagine how depressing it was for the whole country. And a few hours later, the Japanese volleyball team won the gold medal against the Soviet Union, and they became very popular. And in 1968, just before the Mexico Olympic Games, a brand that manufactured and produced the ball for the Olympic Games, asked because they have good sales in mind, asked to create a manga on volleyball, and taking advantage from the popularity of the Witches of the Orient. And this first manga was created by a female mangaka that worked for a female magazine called Margaret in 1968, and it was a huge success, and it turned to an anime the next year in 1969. And from that first anime called Attack Number One, all the magazine and TV channel produced their own, and I found like 20 titles from the 60s to nowadays. So it's amazing. It creates a kind of tradition in manga and anime of volleyball, and it always starring women in this volleyball anime. And
because I remember when I was a kid, I remember to watch in public channel, Portuguese public channel, also anime on football, which was very popular. I can't remember the name, but
yeah, we have the same in France too.
Yeah, and I was, of course, I will ask you both some particular questions about your films, but also the challenge of it was to trying to find connections between both films. And you were talking about the anime that you saw as a child, and then you discovered with the film that it was about this particular story. And also, your film Blue Rose also has this these connections with,
Exactly.
with your personal history. And what I wanted to ask and to introduce this theme that I think are both present in here, and I find it fascinating, especially when we are dealing with films that are more lean on the documentary or essay film, is the question of investigation. How each how each director would address and tackle the question of investigation. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the familiar aspect of that it's on the first part of the film, but also on the question of how to tackle this idea of investigation for the films.
Yeah. So the moment that Carlos mentioned is that the film starts with the sequence of the archival photographs, and it's actually very close to what you described, this moment of absolute bliss of finding this coincidence with your adult persona and something very long forgotten from childhood. I also had this, and it actually sparkled the whole process and kicked off the whole process of filming. Is basically I am now 34 already, and till the age of maybe 32 I was quite sure that I don't have any childhood photographs, or I have very few of them. And my parents were also quite sure about that, because they said, oh, it was 90s, we were too busy with taking photographs. And then my grandparents, both of them, passed away, and it was a moment when you had to clear out the apartment, and I'm not living with my parents for already many years, and they called and said, like, we found 3 boxes of photo slides. Maybe you would like to have a look at them. And I was like, sure. And so I visited my parents, and I was absolutely thrilled because I discovered 3 boxes full of my photographs. It was only me on each of the slide. And basically they were all taken by my grandfather, who was a photo enthusiast, but who was also a very huge garden and flower enthusiast. So he was basically, what he was doing, he was putting me always in the middle of the shot, standing in front of his flowers and taking pictures of me in sort of the progression of many, many years. And when I saw the pictures, it was like a flashback, you know, in the spy films, when a person remembers his previous or her previous lives, because I completely forgot about that. And it suddenly really, you know, put all the lines together, because I was absolutely clueless why I had this very strong interest in flowers. I thought it was purely aesthetical, and I never could explain why exactly I'm so like keen on flowers. And then by seeing these photographs, I was like, okay, this is where it comes from. And because I was going to make a film flower for quite a long time, but I was always thinking it would be some sort of, you know, aesthetical, very beautiful something. But then I was like, no, it's much deeper than this. And the investigation started from the self-investigation. So what drives me in particular to make the film about this particular subject? Because I think it's really the core sort of knowledge about yourself that director needs to have, like what drives you personally. And then for me, always the process, because I'm very much a research-based director and artist. So for me, the research was really in the books in the beginning. So investigation about just reading about flowers a lot, about the history and science also. And I mean, I had at some point I had just stack of notes, this pile of notes with all the super crazy interesting facts. And through this investigation and reading, I found also the leads to my future heroes. Like one of the heroes of the film is a Japanese person, and I read about him in one of the books, and then it like sort of unravels. And so for me, investigation is always like, you know, trying to find a mushroom in the forest. Mm-hmm. So, and then you arrange these mushrooms in a sort of a composition or something. And I would say that the film was shot in my head before I started to shoot, and it was all due to this investigative sort of approach, trying to learn, trying to be curious. So curiosity is my major driving force always. And then, of course, when you're in the field, you already film something different, but you always have this original plan or intention at least. So yeah, I would say for me, it's the investigation is very much like the core thing, the practice that because some, documentary directors say like, what sort of research? You just go out in the field,
Exactly.
you meet people,
That's what
you speak like running on camera. It's not my style at all. I'm very, very sort of nerdy person who really likes to read a lot before seeing stuff.
And also before Julien, you were saying, and also remind us of that some stories that we've heard about the famous writers that whenever they wanted to write a book or a novel about something, fiction film, then there was this stories about the writers being closed in their rooms for years, reading all they could about a certain subject just to create. Well, not just, but to create a fiction film. So this preparation and investigation is also, remind me of this idea.
I think it also really has to do with the type of personality you have as a person, because I'm naturally a very, not a scared person, but I'm a bit afraid of the whole world that is out there. So I try to, equip myself with a huge backpack of knowledge.
Yeah.
So when I'm out there, I have like this thing behind me that can help me. But I think it's very different. Maybe for Julien it's very different.
Yeah, I want also to react maybe after my reply, because I think the parallel between flowers and archives could be a very nice topic to talk about.
Yeah.
I think I'm quite the same person that I really need to really study. It's probably because of I spent 4 years in university and really like it. I study history, contemporary history, and I like to read books and articles and to make my own opinion from it. And so this time, it was interesting because it really has affects the way I make the film. So I read, because they were famous, I read articles from the 60s, mainly written by Westerners, American and European, and also from academics, more recent paper on post-war era in Japan and how the country managed to rebuild and refound from the cornerstone, everything, the society, the economy. And when I discovered all these written materials, I was really upset by what I discovered, because I really thought that they were just misunderstanding the whole thing, because they were not aware of high-level sport and they were not aware of the Japanese reality. So for the very first time, I feel the need to meet the person. All my previous films were made only with found footage, and there is no need for TV-like interviews, because for me it was useless. But this time it was not, because all these observers, academics, specialists, they were talking in the name of the players, and those women never have the chance to speak for themselves and just to tell their story. So in this case, the information and all the aspect of the story I could find in the archives helped me to write a questionnaire for the players. But I was really keen on giving them the opportunity to tell the story by themselves. So it was also very pleasant for me as a filmmaker to discover my voiceover and don't have this superpower to say what I want, but just discovering during the interview and the audio recordings. And so it helped me to ask the good questions in terms of I ask questions that I don't know the answer yet. I think it's very important also. Maybe in more TV-like production, filmmakers and producers, they already know everything, and they just try to tell their story, whatever the archives is really saying or proving. Because with the voiceover and the editing, you can make the footage do speak for yourself. And in my case, I really like to speak for the footage or learn from them, and I don't want to slave them. I'd rather be mastered by them, and I just follow, and it drives me really to the story, and I try to do my best to respect the footage and just learn from it instead of using it as an illustration of my idea of something I already knew before. Mm-hmm. So yes, I'm also a good student. I need to have information and to work on and to know everything. I remember when I met the players, I found all the statistics of every other game, and some of them were substitute. Mm-hmm. And because they were very humble, they were saying that no, I don't play this game because I was a substitute. And I said, no, I have your stat. You were one of the best players of this game. I said, no. I said, yes, and I showed them. And yes, so I also maybe to be more confident, I really have to know to have this first work of investigation and I think it also create you have to find your way into it and my film was different after this first work in the paper archives and this first studying.
But I would say that chance encounters also play a big role, because when you go out there filming the heroes or anything, you really need to be very alert on what's happening around, because some of the characters of my film, I would say most of them, are absolutely chance encounters. When I just saw a person and was fascinated by the way he looks, because he had like very white hair, and I was like, wow, he looks like a wizard. And then I approached this man, and he was absolutely baffled by me, approaching in the like out of nowhere, saying like, hello, I would love to film you. And he was like, actually, from that moment, I really had to spend 2 months calling him on a daily basis, trying to persuade him to be in the film. And he was absolutely crazy person, because he told me that I can only call him at 6 a.m. So I had to wake up every day 6 a.m. and call him and make this lengthy conversations about why he needs to be in the film. And
is this the one that you had on one of the chapters that you call The Wanderer?
Yeah, okay. It's him. Mm-hmm. And this is how the film was made up, out of these chance encounters, because there is also a chapter about the festivity in rural Spain, and we arrived there. Really, the only clue I had is that the website of their city office, and I wrote them this sort of school letter. Hello, my name is Olya. We would like to come and film something. And they just answered very shortly, yes, you can come. And then we arrived there, and nobody speaks English. No, like we really don't know if the festivity gonna happen or not, because there is no Facebook page for it or anything. And then we just hear some distant music of, like, you know, drum training, and we enter, and it's a musical school for kids, and it's full of crazy, absolutely running around. Everyone is playing instruments, and I'm standing there not knowing a word in Spanish, trying to explain that I would like to film there, and they were like, yeah, we don't know, maybe you come tomorrow, maybe we will see something. And it was this process of always, you know, finding the very end of the thread and then pulling it like this, and trying to, I absolutely agree with you that is the worst thing is just to impose your narrative on the footage, and trying to illustrate your thoughts or ideas with the, like, you know, people around. So for me it was always the other way around. So I find this fascinating person or the fascinating situation, and I film it, and then I understand what was behind it that could, you know, be backed up by my own thoughts and ideas. But so I really share your logic, and I also think is that we as film directors need to cater for the heroes and environments that we want to highlight in our films, and not the other way around, because I also think that this culture of the, you know, director as a super figure that sort of, you know, superimposes his or her vision on the world is gone.
And to try to bend a little bit the idea of reality towards your own ideas. No, 2 days ago I was in another discussion about a Portuguese filmmaker, a documentary on a Portuguese filmmaker that already died some years ago, called Paulo Rocha, and he has this beautiful sentence. He did a fiction film, and he has this sentence that he had these ideas for the films, and even when he had some story already, he would bend his head, not to struck, this expression is something like to struck his head on the wall of reality, and reality would systematically prove him that his ideas were ridiculous because they were academic. So this idea of course, we are talking about construction of fiction film.
But the fascinating coincidence about this person is that he also spent 10 years living in Japan. Julien's film is about Japanese people, and my film is very much about Japanese sort of way of seeing stuff. And I'm also by my first education is the Japanese specialist or whatever. I learned Japanese in school, so I think that the mentality that you described of you know, not trying to break the wall but sort of bend over and be observing, be very much open to what's happening is I really admire this, and in my film I speak a lot about this sort of alternative modes of seeing the world and trying to see behind the patterns of attention that is already formed by mainstream culture. Because if we take the example of flowers, I would say the most obvious example is the flowers that are sold on the street. They're like very big and bright and like pop flowers. And there is a way, for example, for Japanese people to appreciate the beauty of very small and insignificant flowers that are maybe not that beautiful, but still they have their own value. And I think it's something that this Paulo Rocha also appreciated in Japanese culture.
That's one of the things that I wanted to, maybe it's now the time to introduce, that would link in a way, link the film, both films, because of course your film also relates to the Japanese volleyball player, but also watching your film, we could sense that this Japanese team is not only addressing the question of sport, but also addressing the question of effort, teamwork, the post-war Japan. So, in what way, after or while you were doing, and now that you've done the film, in what way your relationship with Japanese culture and Japanese history changed through the film?
Wow, hard to say like this. Of course, I learned many things, and that's the pleasure, and that's enjoyable to make films, to learn something from it. Maybe I can just add something about the making, and I think we are really keen on choosing for every topic a new narration, and not just apply the same recipe for each film. And because every subject, every topic, every people we met needs a new form, a new narration. And this time, when I discovered the story, it was we can't isolate this group of women from the rest, from the historical and social background, and it was very. Everything was really mixed up. The anime was vampirized the true story, and so everybody knew the anime, but not the first inspiration. Some players started playing volleyball after watching not the footage but the anime, and they were inspired by fictional characters instead of true ones. So I really like this chain of inspiration, and how sometimes fiction and reality are just mixed up, and it like rebounds. A true story inspires a fiction, and a fiction creates sometimes new style, new way of thinking, new way of dressing, new way of talking, and people in everyday life are actually inspired by this fiction rather than another reality. So I really like, and so that's why I choose to interweave anime footage and the shooting of our commitment, and so I mainly discovered that, but maybe I have to go more deeper in the content. My main discovery is how the Western countries were convinced that they were more advanced in terms of women emancipation, because basically they considered the trainer of this woman as a demon coach. They thought that he was a wicked man, and the women were, because they were women, they are victims, and they don't choose to become high-level athletes. Mm-hmm. They were just puppets, and of course it was not the case. So I discovered how Westerners, so to speak very generally, but we were convinced that, let's say, in France in the 60s, the women were able to do almost everything, and they can work, but only if it was necessary. They can drink alcohol, but not too much, with moderation. They can't get drunk like men do. And for the first time, the Westerners were shocked by the Japanese method, so they nickname the coach the demon coach, etc. And so they tried to speak on the behalf of the women dignity, but instead they never imagined that those women could not only accept it but choose it. And I discovered that in our, and I think it's still still ruling nowadays. Women are getting more and more freedom and emancipate, but this this question of excess and moderation is still a touchy one. So they were not. They are facing for the first time women that train without any moderation. In France, women practice some sports, but sparingly. And this time, this excess of women were unbearable, and that's the main things I learned from this story.
And also, I think there's also the question I think you mentioned a little bit before, which is challenging also a little bit the Western notion of what it means to be a professional sportsman, because they usually went they worked all day and then they trained a lot, so there was a very small time of rest, and still they won the gold medal. So also the film, I think, tries to challenge us a little bit that the specialized sportsmen are necessarily better fit to win a lot.
Yeah. This maybe I was talking about the misunderstandings. This habit of the Japanese to how they bear efforts and hard work is very far from the French, for instance, type of way of thinking. So I think in Japan, in everything they do, not only train sports training, but they go very deep and very seriously in the subject. They are very keen on giving the best they can. They are very, I don't know. There's a taste for effort, and especially in France, the notion the work is very quickly a political issue. People are demonstrating for not to work too long in life, and work is not a way of living. It's a task, it's a duty, but it's not something that you want. In Japan, it's quite different. I think people really like to elderly people work. It's a financial need for sure, but they are also very depressed when they are not allowed to work, to stop working, although they are sometimes 80 years old. But that's why also I saw in Japan.
I one of the things that I find it fascinating also, on documentary fiction, in directing in general, is that whenever a director makes a choice, it deals with a lot of possibilities of what he's aiming at, but also what he leaves behind. And I was thinking about how, let's say, sometimes the dangers, or at least to go around the most common way of doing stuff. And in Blue Rose, I was thinking that one of the things that was more challenging to me is that the way that I think the film tries to go around the idea that if I have a film about flowers, I already automatically have a beautiful film. So the idea, for me as a spectator, I was always engaging with another different idea of beauty, and it kind of reminds me. For me, this idea of beauty is a more maybe abstract idea, but it is somehow related with this question that we have already been discussing here, which is how can a film transmit to the audience the doubt of the creator, the doubt in the sense of humility. Like, I pose myself a question, I don't know the answer, and still I do a film. And this is one of the things that I find it most interesting. But this is just a general comment on, let's say, go around the most common stuff or the dangers. But I also wanted to still to continue on this thread of the Japanese on the Japanese culture, which is the you have the ikebana moment, well, from the beginning and then at the end. And I don't know if you thought about the structure itself of the film as some sort of flower arrangement art. Or
Absolutely, and. Moreover, one of the titles in the progress of making the film was Florilegium. I don't think I don't know the correct pronunciation, but it's in the medieval time. It was the books. In each page was showing some sort of a piece of wisdom, and this wisdom was like a flower, and the bouquet of wisdom would be this book. Mm-hmm. And so for me it was always because the film is built in chapters that are seemingly not connected directly by any sort of events or characters that travel through them, but of course there is a traveling character who is the narrator, who is me. But yes, I thought of the chapters as the arrangement of the flowers, and you very rightfully mentioned this critical problem of beautification of the content when we deal with the subjects that are traditionally objectified as beautiful or aesthetic, and we of course speak here of women and nature, which are like the most problematic in today's discourse of the political discourse of how do we speak of women or how do we speak of nature as not commodity or a resource of pure delight for your eyes. So, and for me, the worst compliment after my film would be people approaching me saying like, this was a beautiful film. I would just like to, kill this person, because for me, it was the challenge how to not oversee it, but how to go out of this idea that film about flowers must be just the beautiful film because flowers are so beautiful. And I was always trying to avoid this beautification and making alone, steady shots with a flower on a pedestal or whatever, because this is exactly what I was fighting against, this absolutely omnipresent objectification and commodification of nature, of flowers. And one of the main ideas of the film is that plants and flowers in particular used to be very meaningful symbols and signs that were used originally in early religions and then in medieval sacral knowledge and philosophy as the symbols of spiritual clarity, growth, and all sorts of symbols, and then they would eventually lose this symbolic meaning and end up as just commodity. And so I was really, really struggling to find the way back to the moment where flowers and plants in general would signify more than just a beautiful object. And it was hard because I also work with a very talented director of photography, Sasha Kulak, and she cannot not shoot it beautifully. So it was quite problematic, but and I think that in the end, film is beautiful, but I also really hope that people will see in it more just than aesthetical beauty.
Exactly.
Did you include your grandparents' photographies in your film? Of course.
Yeah.
So because just have in mind that of the beautiful book of Roland Barthes in France, La Chambre Claire, he talked about how peculiar are photography compared to film. And it's also his morbid aspect because it's just something that you captured but doesn't exist anymore. And I really like I think you find something very interesting between working on flowers and photography and footage. Makes sense for me because flowers were also for centuries the main topic of what we call in paintings vanity. Mm-hmm. And vanity were a more how to express how elusive are the flowers. So they are dying also very quickly. And I think I read this very intelligent book written by Roland Barthes, and it really, it changed my point of view on photography. And I think the photography of this particular aspect of a frozen time, something that, and it's still moving without moving when you watch it. And it reminds me really of what was the use of vanity in paintings. When you have a beautiful flower on a paintings near a skull or a candle, it was the three main topics of vanity. So I think flowers also remind us of how elusive is life, and so it's not only the beauty, but also how and
it's the
not sorted,
reminder
but of death for sure.
Yeah, that was the main comment of my brother, who is absolutely unrelated to cinema, but he asked, why don't you have any funerals or death? But I thought death is really omnipresent when we speak of flowers, because it's just the subline of the film is the journey to the world of fleeting beauty, and is it's constantly is elusive. But also, speaking of the relation of our two films, as I mentioned before, there's nature and women as the main, subjects of objectification. And Julien mentioned at some point that Westerners were over-imposing their own narrative as what they thought about this team in Japan. And I think it's also very close to flowers, because flowers cannot speak to us, let's put it this way. So we sort of create the narratives for flowers the way Westerners created the narrative for this team. And I would say it's the interesting challenge for director to try to hear what this seemingly silent characters could tell for themselves. And it's amazing that you found the way to reach out to the women and have conversation with them. I mean, I didn't have conversations with flowers, of course, but I was trying to sort of read them.
But there is a sentence which I think kind of fits this, not because what we were talking here is not so much to avoid the notion of beauty, but it's to make it more dense, more complex, aside from the aesthetic part of beauty. And there's this sentence, I think, in the film, which says that flowers used to be texts and now they are just images. So it kind of also reminds me of this idea of there was this different signifiers for flowers over the years, and suddenly they are just okay. They go with the short ticket to say I love you or my sentiments or whatever. So this goes in the other direction of the idea of trying to be more complex.
Yeah, so I would say that the simplification is the main problem of 21st century and 20th century modernism, and all these dualities is basically shortcuts for simplifying everything. Is they are either the angels or witches. Yeah. They did not try to find something in between. So I really like the word nuanced and nuances. Yeah. So you really try to see the shades and avoid the dualistic vision of any subject.
Still about the question of whenever you doing a film, trying to do a try to challenge things and try to find the path in between things. One of the things that is most fascinating about Sorcières is that the way you manage to, in a way, have a more humane portrait of these these women that you go and meet, but at the same time, in the same film, you have anime and you have Portishead songs, and you have, like, let's say, very broadly phrased, more pop aesthetics. So was this in your mind, whenever you were doing the film, was this a problem in the sense that would these two universes fit in a way or not? Or just, okay, it felt right and there was no question about this marriage of, let's say, pop aesthetics or in...
As I already said, I really thought that their story were very linked to the anime. They were inspired. They're the source of inspiration, and also the era they were living in, the reconstruction of the country, and the whole society was expected to work a lot for this recovery. So they were just involved in all these things. So everything was mixed up, and I can't really put away a thing from the other. So that's why I work with a very interweaved editing. It was really my purpose and my aim. But I have also want to add a more practical dimension to our discussion, because sometimes the audience and critics, we forget that we also have very many technical issues.
Exactly.
And in my case, I work with footage, and I have, for instance, too long game to tell the story of a volleyball match. But for the World Championship final, I found a Russian film that was preserved in my collection, and the footage lasts like 3 or 4 minutes only, and the editing was weird, and you can't really figure out the rallies and how it was the running of the match. So I discovered that Attack Number 1, the anime, this anime lasts 1 and 4 episodes, and the 2 last episodes were focusing on a game, on a match between Japan and USSR. So I have now 40 minutes of footage, which was an anime. But so I just use the anime to fill in the void left by the footage, and use the anime as a mark, as if it was reality captured. So I was resolving here technical issues before I woke up and say, okay, I'm a genius. I have this magnificent idea. I'm gonna edit anime, and it was just. And we were talking about, I think, our ability of filmmakers is, I think, to grab opportunities and just look what we have and what's the best thing I can do with it. I don't have all the footage I need, so let's find it. And I think this is exactly where the creativity could happen. You know, you have to have a frame. Just like you, we have so many good subjects and so many things to do. We need also to focus on something, because it could be freaking to have all these topics around. Technical issues sometimes help us to be creative, and the issues could be the real source of creativity.
And also the history of cinema is the main changes in the history of cinema. And most of the times they are doing this. They are solving technical particular things, and suddenly from this that grows a lot of
mistakes became a wonderful creation.
Problem solving. We haven't talked about a little bit about one of the also most the most interesting and compelling elements of the film, which is in some parts, not the whole film, sometimes the voiceover. It kind of remind me a little bit some Russian tradition, because it's of some film, because it's so poetically in a way. I wanted to ask you if it was, how did you write it, or how did it come about?
I would say I was being pregnant with this text for quite a while, and I was just waiting for the right moment. And only when I shot the film, I already knew the voiceover that would be right for the scenes. So when I shot it, but before starting to edit it, I wrote the text, and I would just write it one chapter a day in one sprint, and I never edit the texts. So once it's done, it's done. I'm not rewriting anything or revising. And for me, because it's a debut film, it was quite a challenging experience for me as like coming out as a filmmaker, because I have been on the other side of the business for quite a while. I was creative director, so I was working with directors as a person who, asks directors to do stuff, and then I sort of crossed this line on the sand and became myself a filmmaker. So for me, voicing it and voicing the whole, my transformation was very important. So I had to read the voiceover myself, although I was really trying to avoid it till the very last minute, and I was doing tests with different friends of mine who have really nice voice, or who had voice that I liked, and it always felt weird. And then I worked with two very talented persons on sound, and both of them told me, like, you must do it yourself, because it's your text, it's very personal, it's a very personal film, so it needs to be a voice, and it needs to be in Russian, because really it's something that comes from you. And and me not being a professional reader, of course, it was a torturing experience of reading it, to be honest. In the film, the voiceover that is used is actually a draft voiceover that I recorded on my iPhone to edit the film, because in the end it was the one that sounded the most, intimately and sincere and real and normal, because at the moment when I was in the studio, I had to make this voice. I couldn't, relax myself. So, but the tradition, the text was really much inspired by, and the writing style was very much inspired by the writings I was reading specifically to get myself inspired. I was reading one of the most it's genius, absolutely, book that is called Modern Nature by Derek Jarman. It's a beautifully written text that he wrote. He started to write it when he already knew that he will die, and he was diagnosed with AIDS, and it was just a matter of time, and he started to have a garden. So he was gardening, and he was basically, trying to fight this the fear of death. He was writing down very simple notes of how plants are doing in his garden. So today this one is bloomed, this one died, blah, 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 blah. And so by the end of the book, he is already blind, and he's losing, everything. And but the way it was written, the text, I really loved this very personal, very sincere intonation, and I tried to keep it. And this was one text, and the second one was, of course, as any debut filmmaker, is Chris Marker. And I read the original text for Saint-Salé maybe 200 times. And but I also realized that I need do not need to overstress myself too much because he wrote it when he was 66, and so I thought like I still have time in my life to reach this sort of craft. But so again, reading a lot, preparation, getting yourself inspired was very much part of this voiceover.
And you tell that you don't edit the draft voice, so during the editing of the image, you never add or cut the original draft.
Well, no, not really, because I find it's a very tempting thing to beautify the text again and again and again. But then I also afraid that I will eventually depart from the original feeling that was in this text, that was maybe put awkwardly in the words, but it somehow revealed what I felt in the moment. And then if I re-edit it, because I'm good in editing stuff, in writing very smart, intelligent texts, in the end it will be a sort of a monster, a beautiful monster full of very intelligent long words and constructions, and this is already something else. So I try to really beat my hands and not edit.
Well, unfortunately, our time is up. Well, it was a great pleasure to talk to you both. I want to thank you both for being here with us. And I want to remind everyone that has been listening, and I hope what we've said here sparkled the curiosity to go and watch Blue Rose on the 1st of September, 1845, here at Culturgest, small auditorium. And also Les Sorcières de L'Orient tonight at 9:45 at Cinema São Jorge, Sala Manuel de Oliveira, or also outside near Culturgest tomorrow at 9:15, Library Palácio de Alveias Garden. It's going to be a wonderful time to be there as well. Thank you both. It was
Thank you. It was really nice.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.